Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into the world of Bitcoin,
Oh yeah, Bitcoin.
the OG cryptocurrency.
It really is fascinating how much attention it gets.
It really is. We're going to be looking at its journey all the way from those early kind of cypherpunk roots all the way to where it is now as this global phenomenon.
Yeah, to really understand it, we need to go back to its origins and see how it came about from all those other attempts at digital cash before it.
Yeah. And you know what? We've got some good sources to guide us through that journey.
Oh, cool.
We've got some excerpts from a Wikipedia article that outlines the history of Bitcoin. And then we also have a table of just key details about it, even little things like the official logo.
Very cool.
But even before Bitcoin, there were all these other attempts at making digital cash.
Yeah, back in the 80s, you had David Chaum and his eCash.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was focused on privacy,
Interesting.
but it didn't really catch on because it still relied on a central authority, and banks weren't super excited about untraceable transactions.
Yeah. So, it's interesting how even back then, central control was an issue.
Yeah, and then later you have Adam Back's Hashcash in the late 90s.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it was designed to stop spam email by making it computationally expensive to send emails.
Wow.
But Hashcash couldn't stop double spending that issue of spending the same digital token twice.
Yeah, that's like the fundamental problem with digital cash, right? It undermines the entire thing.
Exactly like photocopying money.
Yeah.
Just doesn't work.
So both of those attempts show how hard it is to make a digital currency that's both secure and decentralized.
Right. But then in the late 90s, you get B-Money by Waydai
Okay.
and BitGold by Nick Szabo.
Interesting.
And these were huge. They laid the foundation for Bitcoin.
So were those like the theoretical blueprint, but they never got implemented?
Yeah, they stayed as ideas outlining the principles of a decentralized digital currency.
Interesting.
But they were super influential for those early cryptographers and cypherpunks.
Yeah.
And it's worth mentioning Hal Finney, too. He was a big cypherpunk and actually made a system using reusable proof of work back in 2004.
Wow. So that was like years before Bitcoin.
Yeah, like a key precursor to the tech that Bitcoin uses.
Okay, so we have these failed attempts and all these brilliant ideas floating around.
Right.
And then 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto appears
Yeah.
out of nowhere
A mystery.
and drops the Bitcoin white paper.
It was like a bomb on the financial world.
Yeah, what was it about that white paper that was so revolutionary?
What was so clear and simple and just laid out a solution to the issues that all those other digital cash attempts had run into.
Okay.
It was decentralized, secure, and it could stop double spending.
And the key to that is blockchain, right?
Right.
Can you break that down a little bit?
So think of it like a public ledger, a record of every Bitcoin transaction ever.
Okay.
And it's spread across a network of computers so nobody controls it.
Wow.
And it's all secured by cryptography.
So nobody can mess with it.
Right. It's very difficult to tamper with.
Yeah. So it's basically a massive, transparent, tamper-proof database that anyone can see and check.
Yeah, and that's what lets Bitcoin be truly decentralized.
Wow, that's amazing.
No banks, no governments, just a network of people validating transactions.
That's crazy.
And so that brings us to the birth of Bitcoin.
Yeah, January 3, 2009, the Genesis block is mined, and the Bitcoin network is officially launched.
Such a big day.
Yeah, but there's more to it than that, right? Like, the timing is important.
Oh, absolutely.
It comes right after the 2008 financial crisis.
At a time when nobody trusted those big financial institutions.
It's like Nakamoto was trying to send a message.
Totally.
It even has that headline from the Times, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks.
Wow.
It's like a statement
Yeah.
that we need a new system.
One that's free from governments and banks.
Then just 9 days later, we see the very first Bitcoin transaction.
10 Bitcoins from Nakamoto to Hal Finney, that cypherpunk pioneer we talked about.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty big moment.
Yeah, it really showed the spirit of that early Bitcoin community.
Yeah, and then others joined in, right? People like Waydai and Nick Szabo, whose ideas kind of led to Bitcoin.
Yeah, it was a small group, but they were all dedicated and believed in this new technology.
And we can't forget about Bitcoin Pizza Day.
Oh, yeah. May 22nd, 2010.
Laszlo Hanyecz buys 2 pizzas with 10,000 Bitcoins.
Can you imagine those pizzas today?
Yeah.
Worth millions.
It's crazy how much Bitcoin's value has changed.
Yeah, from a novelty online purchase to this huge global asset.
But those early years were full of mystery.
Yeah.
2010 Nakamoto vanishes
Gone.
like a ghost.
Nobody knows who they were.
Was it one person or a group of people?
We might never know.
It's crazy.
But even though the creator disappeared, Bitcoin kept growing.
And in 2012, the Bitcoin Foundation was created.
Right. It was a way to formalize things and get more people using Bitcoin.
It felt like Bitcoin was growing up,
Yeah, for sure.
moving past its experimental phase.
Right.
But of course, not everything was perfect.
Yeah.
Bitcoin quickly got a reputation for being used in online black markets like Silk Road.
Right. And in 2013, the U.S. Financial Crimes Enforcement Network started looking into virtual currencies like Bitcoin.
Oh, so the government was taking notice.
Definitely, they said that Bitcoin miners who sell their coins are money services businesses.
So now they had to follow a bunch of regulations.
Yeah, it was a big wake-up call for the community.
And then things really escalated that year.
Oh,
In May, the U.S. government seized the Mt. Gox exchange because it wasn't registered properly.
wow.
In June, the DEA seized Bitcoins from someone trying to buy illegal stuff.
Oh, no.
And in October, the FBI shut down Silk Road, arrested Ross Ulbricht, the founder, and took a ton of Bitcoin.
It seems like those events really changed things for Bitcoin.
Definitely. They highlighted this tension between Bitcoin being decentralized and the government wanting to control things.
Yeah, and in December, China banned their financial institutions from using Bitcoin.
So that must have had a big impact.
Yeah, the price dropped a lot.
It seems like those early years were a wild ride for Bitcoin.
Full of innovation, excitement, and controversy.
But even with all that, Bitcoin kept getting more users.
By 2017, millions of people were using cryptocurrency wallets, and Bitcoin was the most popular.
It was growing so fast.
Yeah.
And with that growth came new challenges.
Like scalability.
Right. Bitcoin needed to be able to handle more and more transactions.
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting.
Okay. And that's where we'll pick it up in part 2.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned.
So as Bitcoin got more popular, it became clear that the technology needed to be able to handle way more transactions.
Right. It needed to scale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in August 2017, we got SegWit, a software upgrade to help with that.
SegWit, what is that?
So SegWit stands for Segregated Witness,
Okay.
and it's a way to make Bitcoin more scalable. It basically makes transaction data smaller by taking out the digital signature data.
So you're making each block more efficient so it can fit more transactions.
Exactly, and that means the network can process more transactions per second.
Okay, that makes sense.
Plus, SegWit made it possible to develop the Lightning Network.
The Lightning Network, what's that?
Think of it as a network of payment channels that run on top of the Bitcoin blockchain.
Okay.
So instead of adding every single transaction to the main blockchain,
Right.
the Lightning Network lets people make lots of transactions off-chain,
Okay.
and then those get added to the blockchain all at once later.
So it's like having these little side roads for Bitcoin transactions to avoid traffic jams on the main highway.
That's a great way to put it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's still being worked on, but the Lightning Network could really change how we use Bitcoin day to day,
Okay.
making things like micropayments and even payments to other countries a lot easier.
It sounds like a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. But back to SegWit, it wasn't all smooth sailing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not everyone in the Bitcoin community agreed with it. Some people wanted to just make the block size bigger to fit more transactions.
Okay.
And this disagreement led to a fork in the blockchain.
Oh, fork.
Yeah, basically a split.
Oh, okay.
And that's how we got Bitcoin Cash.
So now there are 2 different types of Bitcoin.
Yeah, kind of Bitcoin Cash is like its own thing with its own rules.
So like a parallel universe of Bitcoin.
Yeah, you could say that.
So it's like a whole new cryptocurrency just because people disagreed on how to do things.
Exactly. And it shows how important it is for everyone to agree in a decentralized system.
Right, so that the blockchain stays reliable.
Exactly.
Wow, it's amazing how Bitcoin went from this small thing to this whole complicated ecosystem.
Yeah, but in all this, something else started happening.
What's that?
Mainstream finance started paying attention to Bitcoin.
Okay, so this is where those big financial institutions come in.
Right.
So what changed their minds?
Well, the big turning point was in December 2017
Okay.
when the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, or CME, started offering Bitcoin futures contracts.
Bitcoin futures.
Yeah, so a futures contract is basically an agreement to buy or sell something at a specific price in the future.
Okay.
People use them to protect themselves from price changes or to try to make money off of future price changes.
So with Bitcoin futures, people were betting on what the price of Bitcoin would be later on.
Exactly, without actually having to buy any Bitcoin.
Okay, that's interesting.
And when Bitcoin futures started being offered on a big exchange like the CME, it made investors feel more comfortable about Bitcoin.
Like it was more legitimate now. So
Right.
it's like Bitcoin was finally being taken seriously.
Exactly. But then 2018 brought some challenges.
What happened?
Well, China completely banned Bitcoin trading.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So no trading Bitcoin in China at all.
Yeah, and that caused the price to drop a lot.
It seems like that happened a lot in the early days.
It did. And then there was some big hacks and thefts from cryptocurrency exchanges.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it made people worried about the security of Bitcoin.
So even though the technology itself is secure, those exchanges weren't.
Right. They were vulnerable.
So there were definitely still risks for people who wanted to invest in
Yeah,
Bitcoin.
especially for people who didn't know how to keep their Bitcoin safe.
But even with those challenges, Bitcoin bounced back.
It survived that rough period in 2018 and came out even stronger.
Okay, so we've gone through the early days of Bitcoin,
Right, the scalability problems and the first steps into mainstream finance.
but things are about to get even crazier in the 2020s.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a whole new chapter for Bitcoin.
Definitely, 2020's changed everything for Bitcoin.
How so?
Well, big institutions and corporations started getting involved.
Okay, so not just tech people and early adopters anymore.
Right, it was a whole new game.
So what made them interested all of a sudden?
One reason was that people started to see Bitcoin as a way to protect themselves from inflation.
Because of all the money printing after the pandemic.
Exactly. People were worried that normal currencies would lose value.
Okay.
And since Bitcoin has a limited supply, it seemed like a safe place to put your money, almost like digital gold.
Interesting.
And some big names really got behind Bitcoin.
Like who?
Well, Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy, was a big one.
Okay.
In 2020, his company invested $250 million in Bitcoin.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
It was a huge sign of confidence.
Yeah, like he was really putting his money where his mouth is.
And then other companies followed.
Really?
Yeah, Square, the payments company led by Jack Dorsey, who's a big Bitcoin fan,
Yeah.
invested $50 million.
Wow.
And then MassMutual, a big insurance company, put in $100 million.
Okay, so these are big established companies investing in Bitcoin.
Right. It's a big deal.
Not just some random startup.
Exactly.
It's like Bitcoin finally made it.
And it wasn't just about buying Bitcoin either.
Oh.
In November 2020, PayPal announced that their users could buy, sell, and hold Bitcoin.
That's huge.
Yeah, suddenly millions of people had an easy way to get Bitcoin.
It seems like that was a turning point for Bitcoin becoming more mainstream.
It really was. And as
Yeah.
more investors came in, the price went up.
Okay.
In February 2021, Bitcoin's market cap hit $1 trillion for the first time.
$1 trillion.
Wow. People were going crazy.
It seemed like nothing could stop Bitcoin.
Yeah, but there were still important technical developments happening too.
Like what?
In November 2021, the Taproot upgrade was activated.
Taproot, what is that?
It was a big upgrade that made Bitcoin more useful, especially for smart contracts in the Lightning Network.
So what does that mean for normal people using Bitcoin?
Well, smart contracts basically let you automate more complex transactions and agreements on the blockchain.
Okay.
They're like self-executing contracts where the rules are written in code.
Interesting.
This opens up a lot of possibilities for automating things in business, creating new financial tools, and even building decentralized apps.
So it's like Bitcoin becomes more than just money.
Exactly.
It could be used for all sorts of things.
Right. And Taproot also made it easier to use the Lightning Network.
Which makes transactions faster and cheaper, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's all about making Bitcoin more versatile and practical.
Okay, that makes sense.
And while this was happening, Bitcoin was also becoming important on the world stage.
Bitcoin going global.
Yeah. In September 2021, El Salvador, a small country in Central America, made Bitcoin legal tender.
So they were the first country to accept Bitcoin as an official currency.
Yes, exactly.
Wow. So people could actually use Bitcoin to buy things and pay taxes in El Salvador?
Yeah, that was the idea.
That's pretty radical.
It was a big experiment by the president Nayib Bukele.
Okay.
He saw Bitcoin as a way to empower people and challenge the dominance of the U.S. dollar.
Did it work?
Well, it's had mixed results. Some people loved it because it gave them more financial freedom and lower transaction fees.
Okay.
But others were worried about the price swings and the fact that not everyone was using it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A really interesting example of what could happen if a country adopts Bitcoin as its currency.
Definitely. And then back in the U.S., another big thing happened in October 2021.
What was that?
The first Bitcoin futures ETF was launched on the CME.
Oh, yeah. ETS stands for Exchange Traded Fund.
Right, but what's the difference between a Bitcoin futures ETF and just buying Bitcoin futures?
So with a futures ETF, you're basically investing in the price of Bitcoin futures. But With a spot Bitcoin ETF, you're directly investing in Bitcoin itself.
Oh, so you're actually owning Bitcoin,
They,
not just betting on its price.
right, and this was a big win for Bitcoin because it made it easier and safer for regular investors to get involved.
So even more mainstream adoption for Bitcoin.
Yeah, but even with all this progress, Bitcoin's journey wasn't always smooth.
Hmm. I bet those price swings were still happening.
Oh yeah, 2022 and 2023 were pretty wild.
What caused that?
Well, a few things. One big one was the collapse of Terra USD in May 2022.
Terra USD.
Yeah, it was stablecoin.
What's a stable coin?
It's a type of cryptocurrency that's supposed to stay at a stable value, usually tied to the US dollar.
Okay.
They're used a lot in crypto to make trading easier and to reduce those big price swings.
Interesting.
But Terra USD was an algorithmic stablecoin,
Okay.
which means it used a complicated system to keep its value stable.
And that system failed.
It did, and when it did, it triggered a massive sell-off that affected the whole crypto market.
It's like a domino effect.
Exactly. And then, to make things worse, the Celsius network, a big crypto lending platform, froze withdrawals in June 2022.
Why did they do that?
They said it was because of extreme market conditions.
So people couldn't get their money out.
Right, and Celsius was a popular platform for earning interest on your crypto.
Okay.
So when they froze withdrawals, people panicked and started selling their crypto,
That makes sense.
which pushed the price of Bitcoin down even further.
So even though Bitcoin is this revolutionary technology, it's still affected by what happens in the rest of the crypto market.
Exactly.
And those price swings are still a big issue for investors.
They are. But in the middle of all that, there was still innovation happening in the Bitcoin world.
Really?
Yeah, in 2023, we saw Bitcoin ordinals emerge.
Bitcoin ordinals, what are those?
It's a way to create and trade NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain.
NFTs on Bitcoin. I thought those were mostly on Ethereum.
Yeah, but Bitcoin ordinals let developers use the Bitcoin blockchain to create unique digital assets that can't be copied.
Interesting. So Bitcoin is being used for more than just money now.
Right, it's becoming a platform for all sorts of digital assets.
So what happened next?
Well, in January 2024, the first U.S. spot Bitcoin ETFs were launched.
Spot Bitcoin ETFs. What's the difference between those and the futures ETFs we talked about earlier?
So with the spot ETF, you're directly investing in Bitcoin itself,
Okay.
not just betting on its future price.
So it's like owning a piece of the real Bitcoin,
Exactly.
not just a derivative product.
Right, and this was a big deal for Bitcoin proponents.
It made it easier for people to invest in Bitcoin.
Yeah, and it also made it seem more legitimate to institutional investors.
Okay, so after all that, where does Bitcoin stand today?
Well, even with all the ups and downs,
Mhm.
Bitcoin is still going strong.
Really?
Yeah, as of June 2023, there were over 81 million Bitcoin users worldwide.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's about 1% of the world's population.
That's incredible.
And it's not just regular people. Even Donald Trump, the Republican candidate to president, has said he supports the crypto industry.
What did he say?
He said he wants to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the planet if he's elected.
Wow. So Bitcoin has really come a long way.
It really has. It started as this obscure idea, and now it's a global phenomenon.
But the debate about its future is still going on.
Yeah, is it a store of value? A currency?
Right.
A hedge against inflation? Something else entirely.
It's hard to say.
And that's what we'll explore in part 3.
Okay, so we've seen Bitcoin go from this like fringe idea to this trillion-dollar asset.
It's been a wild ride.
It really has. I mean, it's been adopted by countries, embraced and criticized by big institutions.
Yeah,
It's even a topic in presidential elections now.
it's everywhere.
So where does it go from here? Is Bitcoin really delivering on that initial promise of a decentralized financial revolution?
Where that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
To answer it, we got to look at both the good and the bad, the potential and the problems.
Okay.
So on the one hand, Bitcoin offers this vision of financial freedom and power.
Okay.
Imagine a world where you don't need banks to hold your money,
Yeah.
where you can send money anywhere, instantly and cheaply,
Yeah.
and where the whole system is transparent and accountable.
That sounds pretty amazing.
It does, right.
Mm.
But then you remember those early days with Silk Road and all that?
Yeah, has Bitcoin really shaken off that image?
Yeah, that's a good point. Bitcoin still has that reputation from those early days
Right.
of being used for illegal stuff.
Okay.
But it's important to remember any technology can be used for good or bad.
Right. Like cash is used for illegal stuff all the time, but we don't get rid of cash.
Exactly.
So besides all those theoretical ideals, what are some real benefits of Bitcoin?
Well, one big one is that it could make financial services available to way more people.
Okay.
There are billions of people who don't have access to banks or basic financial services.
Yeah.
Bitcoin could give those people a way to participate in the global economy.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it could be life-changing for people in developing countries or people who don't trust traditional financial institutions.
I see what you mean.
And then there's transparency. Every Bitcoin transaction is recorded on the blockchain, so you can always check what happened.
So it's like a permanent record.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that could really help reduce corruption and make financial transactions more accountable.
Yeah, that's a huge plus.
But there are downsides too.
Of course.
We've talked about volatility, which is a big worry for a lot of investors.
Yeah.
Bitcoin's price goes up and down like crazy. And while the technology is very secure, those cryptocurrency exchanges have been hacked before.
Right. So even though the system is secure, those exchanges holding people's Bitcoin aren't always secure.
Yeah, that's a risk, especially if you don't know how to properly store and manage your Bitcoin.
Okay. And what about the environmental impact of all this?
Right. That's another big concern.
Isn't Bitcoin mining using a ton of energy?
Yeah, it does use a lot of energy
Hmm.
to verify transactions and keep the network secure.
Okay.
But people are trying to make Bitcoin mining more energy efficient.
Like using renewable energy.
Exactly.
That's good.
And some people argue that the benefits of Bitcoin, like increasing financial access and improving security, outweigh the environmental costs.
That's a tough question.
Yeah, it is.
And then there's the whole issue of regulations.
Governments all over the world are trying to figure out what to do about Bitcoin.
Yeah, it seems like things are changing all the time.
It's a balancing act.
How so?
If there are too many rules, it could stifle innovation and go against the whole idea of Bitcoin being decentralized.
Okay.
But if there aren't enough rules, people could get scammed or the market could become unstable.
So finding the right balance is key.
Exactly. It's crucial for Bitcoin to succeed in the long run.
It feels like Bitcoin's future is still really uncertain.
It is. It's exciting, uncertain, and definitely something to keep an eye on.
So for our listeners who have been on this deep dive with us, what should they be taking away from all of this?
I think the main takeaway is that Bitcoin is more than just digital money.
Okay.
It's a completely new way of thinking about money, finance, and power.
That's a big deal.
It is. It challenges the systems we're used to and shows us a potential future where people have more control over their own finances.
Yeah, that's powerful.
But it's important to remember the risks and challenges, too.
Right.
You got to be careful and informed when dealing with this stuff.
Good advice.
And here's one final thought.
Okay.
Even if Bitcoin doesn't achieve everything it set out to do, it's already changed the financial world.
How so?
It sparks so much innovation and disruption that things will never be the same.
The genie's out of the bottle.
Exactly. The future of finance is going to look very different from the past.
Well said. It's been an incredible journey exploring Bitcoin with you today.
It has been fascinating.
From its mysterious beginnings to its potential to change everything about finance, it's a story that's still being written.
Definitely.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Bitcoin,
Me too.
and we encourage you to keep learning about this amazing and ever-changing world.
There's always something new to discover.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive, and until next time.